There are many things that can sway someone's opinion on a game. A deal breaker for one might be what makes the game for another. For me, whether or not I enjoy a game really boils down to 5 main sections: characters, story, exploration, combat, and music. Not necessarily in that order. Now, without further ado, let's get into my thoughts on Persona 2 Eternal Punishment. With Eternal Punishment under my belt, I have officially played every mainline Persona game. Yippee! And with how much the characters and themes from Innocent Sin moved me, I was very excited to get into this game. So let's get right into it, shall we? As you may remember, during the events of Innocent Sin, Nyarlathotep made a bet with Philemon that humanity will always favor the path of destruction, and thus made it possible that any rumors that could be spread would become true, essentially causing all the chaos that happened in Innocent Sin. In order to stop his plans to destroy the world, Philemon and our 5 party members made a plan to forget ever meeting one another, and essentially made an alternate timeline in which the 5 protagonists never met. On this side, the place where the events of Eternal Punishment take place, Maya bumps into Tatsuya at the train station, and begins to experience a vague sense of déjà vu, while Tatsuya begins to outright remember, hence his work beginning off-screen to protect Maya and his other friends. Maya's story starts with the investigation of the Joker curse for her job through Kismet. However, as soon as she gets involved, she gets roped deeper and deeper in due to her involvement on the other side. Maya, however, remains oblivious. We confront Tsuno, this side's Joker, multiple times, coming to the conclusion that there are many different factions, such as the Japanese police and the Taiwanese mafia, working together to fulfill some hidden agenda. We also learned that the Joker killings are beneficial to a group called the New World Order. As we progress, we learn that the New World Order is the organization behind all of the Joker incidents. They consist of the police, the Taiwanese mafia, Kandori, who you may remember as the antagonist of Persona 1, and several other old families. They all worship a mummy by the name of Gozen that was unearthed during the construction of a park 20 years ago. The New World Order planned to amass Kegare, a substance that is essentially the sin of man and the cause of the Jokers. They did so at the abandoned laboratory we explored with Nanjo. Furthermore, we learned that they planned to use the Kegare to disturb the Wonglong dragons in the underground ley lines that people use to tell fortunes. By amassing a large quantity of Kegare, they would cause the dragons to attack, shifting the world off its axis and causing the world to destroy itself with natural disasters, which, as you may remember, was what we were trying to prevent from happening in Innocent Sin as well. We eventually meet up with Tatsuya, and he shows us the Alea Shrine and Mount Iwato, where we learn of the events of Innocent Sin and the fact that we exist in an alternate timeline. Using the power of rumors, the New World Order creates a ruin under the subway station, in which, just like in the other side timeline, they use the power of Kegare to cause the destruction of the world outside Sumaru. Our protagonists are then able to travel to the final dungeon and confront the crawling chaos Nyarlathotep. It is in this dungeon that our characters also confront their shadows, coming to terms with themselves before facing the shadow of humanity itself. After Nyarlathotep is defeated, Tatsuya chooses to keep the promise he made. It is during this final dungeon that we learn that Tatsuya, who has been widely known as the Paradox Boy throughout the game, is in fact the reason why this timeline is in danger. After Nyarlathotep is defeated, Tatsuya chooses to keep the promise he made and forgets his friends, which clears away the paradox and allows this side to begin to recover. And that is my very, very brief and kind of vague plot synopsis, so we can get into talking about some of the characters with a little bit more contextual understanding. Of course, if I'm going to talk about the characters, I have to kick us off talking about the Innocent Sin ones, and of course we're going to be starting with our main girl, Maya. Maya in Eternal Punishment is very similar to that of Maya in Innocent Sin. She is cheerful and optimistic, and an avid truth and justice seeker. She has a little bit less personality in this game due to the fact that she assumes the role of the silent protagonist that is common for Persona games. I believe the central themes of Eternal Punishment to be the journey into adulthood and answering the question of when and what it means to become an adult. I think that having Maya be the silent protagonist and essentially the character that witnesses the growth of her companions to be very fitting for her. She was always the character that offered space and support for Eikichi, Lisa, and Tatsuya to grow, and the fact that she once again fulfills that role is true to her character. I think it also goes to show just how stubborn and committed she is, considering how often she was putting herself into danger simply for the sake of Tatsuya and discovering the truth. I was already a really huge fan of Maya after Innocent Sin, and this game just made me love her more as a character because it just continued to express the traits that she already showed in Innocent Sin. Kind of semi-related too, I'm also on that bandwagon of really hoping the Persona 6 protagonist is another girl, because I think Maya's looking a little lonely as the only female protagonist in the series. And that brings me to our leading man, Tatsuya. Tatsuya is very much a golden goose in this game. We spend essentially the entire game outside of the last 2 dungeons actively searching for him. He always seems to appear when Maya or one of his old friends from Innocent Sin are in danger, but is always gone before we have a chance to catch him. Tatsuya has always been a very aloof and self-sufficient person. However, he has also always been someone who has cared very deeply about his friends. His role in this game as the standoffish protector at a surface level is very typical of what we know of his character. However, as we confront the crawling chaos in the final dungeon, and we learn that the real reason why Tatsuya holds onto his memories while the others do not, is because he was too afraid to let go of them. He didn't want to forget them, and by choosing not to, he broke the promise he made to Jun at the end of Innocent Sin, and subsequently was the root of the bad things happening in this timeline. With that change in perspective, and the knowledge of how lonely Tatsuya really is, suddenly the role he plays in the game is a lot more tragic. And the adult characters, Ulala, Katsuya, Baofu, and Maya, who spent most of the game mentoring him and allowing him to come to terms with being an adult and making tough decisions, are the ones who have to watch him fade away, and become dormant in the Tatsuya of this side once more. It lends itself to be a new kind of tragedy, because the character we knew, and our party members knew, the Tatsuya they knew, still exists in some sense. However, he's not really the same person. And finally, that brings me to Jun, Eikichi, Lisa, Anna, and Yukino, the other Innocent Sin important people. Honestly, if I had to complain about anything in terms of the character development and usage in this game, it would have to be that of the original Persona 2 cast. Jun, Eikichi, Lisa, Anna, and Yukino are all largely irrelevant in this game. Jun appears in the Aerospace Museum and helps us save it when Sinnoh sets it on fire. It is also here that Jun returns his lighter to Tatsuya, subconsciously feeling as though it belongs to him. Good callback to the original, especially when Tatsuya replies with, "I have nothing to give in return." I'm gonna be honest though, it took me so long to get through this game that I actually forgot about this interaction, and I was really confused when Tatsuya became like a party member why his idol with the lighter was still the same, despite the fact that he and Jun had never met. And then I was going through my footage for this video and I saw the clip of Jun giving Tatsuya the lighter again, and I was like, oh, I'm so stupid. I forgot. I can't believe I forgot that when I literally love Jun and he's like my favorite character. Eikichi and Lisa both get a dungeon each. Eikichi's is the science lab, which we explore with Nanjo, and I think Eikichi really shines in this dungeon. Despite it not technically being our undie boss, his heart of gold shows through with the lengths he goes through to protect his friends. If you choose to go with Ellie instead, then you very briefly come into contact with Lisa. However, her character in this game, in my opinion, is really stagnant outside of the fact that she loves Tatsuya. Like, even in the dungeon where, like, she was there for the Sumaru TV dungeon, she literally gets, like, 2 lines, and, like, one of them is literally just, "Man, I love Tatsuya, where's that guy at?" So I feel like they really squandered her character and her dungeon cameo. And that brings me to the playable cast of Eternal Punishment. Ulala Serizawa is one of the first characters we meet on this side. She's Maya's roommate and friend who accompanies us to Seven Sisters High to interview the students, in hopes that the two of them will be able to complete Maya's work fast enough to attend a party later that night. Ulala is introduced as a woman who believes in fortune-telling and the superstitious, but is very weary of men despite seeming a little boy crazy. We learn that the reason for this is because she was a victim of a marriage scam. These two traits also manifest in Ulala's awakening to Callisto, a persona who promises to show Ulala true love. During the early game, prior to getting either Nanjo or Ellie, I was worried that they might try to pair Ulala off with either Katsuya or Baofu. I was getting more vibes with Katsuya until the bar scene with Baofu, and then I wasn't sure, but I didn't really like the thought of Ulala ending up with either one of them, or anyone for that matter. I think what makes her character interesting is that she's very human. She longs to be in a relationship with someone who loves her for who she is, someone she can trust wholeheartedly. So when she loses her ideal and is betrayed by someone she trusted in that way, she begins to resent men and herself for being tricked. By extension, she also begins to be jealous and resentful of Maya as well, seeing as Maya is a very cheerful and well-liked person with a successful career and her fated meeting with Deja Vu Boy, aka Tatsuya. This jealousy is what causes her to perform the Joker curse on Maya when she was drunk, leading to Ulala herself possessing the Joker persona until we take her to the Velvet Room to get exorcised. Ulala and the party realize that the Joker persona is an extension of everyone, essentially all the negative emotions people harbor subconsciously. Dwelling on that thought breeds further self-resentment for Ulala. On top of that, in Parabellum, when Ulala and Baofu are together prior to meeting Ellie or Nanjo, Ulala asks Baofu what kind of life he led that makes him feel as though he has purpose, stating that she herself only got more confused as she moved into adulthood. A lot of Ulala's character revolves around the fact that she's someone who is still in the midst of transitioning into adulthood and feeling as though she has a purpose. However, despite those doubts and insecurities, she commits to everything she does with everything she has, and brings a passion and hot-headedness that inspires those around her. By the end of the game, Ulala becomes Baofu's partner, after he starts a search agency for missing people. She also promises Miki, Baofu's last partner, that she will continue to look after him. Ulala finds purpose in helping others and her friends. However, at this point, she feels self-assured enough in both herself and her partnership that she no longer helps them while resenting herself. And I think that was a satisfying conclusion to her character. And that brings us to Katsuya. We meet Katsuya at Seven Sisters High as one of the lead investigators on the Joker case. He is righteous and very by the book, almost stiff. Outside of the Joker case, the only other thing he seems to care about is finding his missing brother, Tatsuya. Early on in the game, Katsuya spends a lot of his time reflecting on Tatsuya and what he wishes Tatsuya was like. We also know that his dad was involved in some kind of underhanded incident that was covered up. The responsibility for Tatsuya, combined with the desire to investigate his father's incident, gives us a clear understanding of why Katsuya is as straight-laced as he is. However, it is through the influence of characters like Baofu and Nanjo, combined with the exposure of the corruption surrounding the Japanese police force, that allow him to alter his values to prioritize looking out for the best interest of people rather than following the rules to a T. When he moves away from the righteousness and begins to open up to the other party members, we learn a lot about who he is as a person, and how he's always been someone who worries more than they should. He even goes as far as asking Maya if she ever gets tired of who she is, which is a thought line that he has as a result of his overthinking. I also think that conversation and the ability to choose Maya's answer were really interesting, because Maya is such an established character that, out of the two options given, I feel as though there was one option that was correct, or what she would say, and one that was maybe something the players could kind of force onto her. In my opinion, the correct answer is her saying that she's okay with who she is, she's comfortable in her own skin. And in response, Katsuya tells her that she's a very strong person and to not let anyone tell her otherwise. As we make our way through the game, we learn that the Sao's father was betrayed by his partner, who allowed false evidence to be used to convict him and subsequently land him in jail. This leads Katsuya to give up his dreams of being a patissier and instead join the police force as a means to clear his father's name. Katsuya is shown to be a character who takes on a lot of responsibility. He is essentially the caretaker of Tatsuya, who is a known trouble child. He's dealing with his side investigation of the father's incidents and trying to prove his innocence, and also he's under immense pressure from his job due to the seniors not taking him seriously, but also essentially having him be the only person working on the Joker case due to the corruption among the police. I think Katsuya learning to accept the help of Maya and Baofu, allowing others to bear his burden with him, was the pinnacle to his character reaching maturity and allowing him to connect with Tatsuya at the end of the game in the way he did. I also find it a bit funny that both brothers suffer from the exact same character flaw. I say that in air quotes because it's a flaw or a strength depending on how you look at it, where they are both extremely self-sufficient and do not like to be a burden to others, essentially leading them to take on way more than they can and not accepting help from anyone. The very last thing I wanted to say about Katsuya was that I really liked him with Maya. That was like a ship that they were kind of alluding to in the game, and they actually outright said that he did like her at the end of the game, like what the shadow did. And I thought that would have been neat because I am a really, really huge Tatsujin stan, and then Maya would have been their big sis for real. So it would have been a win on all sides, just saying. And finally, that brings me to Baofu. Baofu is presented as a very mysterious character. For one, he is a tap buster, someone who is very familiar and comfortable with illegal activity. For two, unlike almost every other playable character in Persona, he is already very well established in the use of personas prior to joining us, even going as far as to take us to the Velvet Room. Unlike many Persona characters though, Baofu hates personas. At the moment in which I started writing the script, I wasn't too sure why. However, this was the theory I wrote before I knew the real reason. First of all, Baofu has connections to Taiwan and the mafia group Tian Len. In Club Zodiac, when trying to save Noriko and Tatsuya, we meet young Pao, the man with the scar, in an official capacity, and learn that Bao killed 25 of his men back in Taiwan. Young Pao retorts by saying his own sins are less because he only killed one Japanese. This angers Baofu quite a bit, leading me to believe that the one Japanese person young Pao did kill was someone very important to Baofu. Furthermore, one of his death battle lines is an apology to someone. The name sounded like Nikki or Miki. I wasn't too sure at the time and didn't want to look it up in case I spoiled anything, but the name actually was Miki. So yes, my theory was that Baofu was in Japan because he was trying to get revenge on young Pao for killing someone close to him, and that the death of that person, the survivor's guilt, and the lingering feelings of failing someone important to you are why Baofu hates personas. And I was pretty much spot on with that theory. I was really proud of myself. Miki was his partner, and Baofu was actually a prosecutor for the Sumaru police by the name of Sega, Kaoru Sega. He was investigating the connection between the Taiwanese mafia and Tatsuno, the main antagonist, when they staged an accident to have Baofu killed. Unfortunately, Baofu awakened to his persona and thus survived, while Miki, who was not a persona user, perished. The death of his partner at the hand of young Pao was covered up, and Baofu chose to take on a life of crime to exact his revenge for Miki's death. That was another reason why he hated personas, because he felt as though it was a power that was useless and it wasn't there when he really, really needed it to be. And yeah, as I said, I'm so proud of myself for picking up on those context clues. Guys, I'm patting myself on the back as we speak. And now, of course, because we're done talking about characters individually, I gotta talk about some of them together. I gotta talk about Baofu and Katsuya's relationship. They're foil characters, guys. They are foil characters who are very interesting. They spend a majority of the game at odds with one another, with Katsuya being, for the most part, very by the book, and Baofu operating under his personal moral code. Playing through the game, we learn about Miki on Baofu's side, and the So brothers' father as well. We learn that their father on this side was investigating Tatsuya Tsuno, otherwise known as the Joker, and he would have caught him too if not for the betrayal of his best friend, Police Chief Togashi. They essentially fabricated charges that their father did not fight against in order to protect the same friend that betrayed him. I found this to be an amazing link between Baofu and Katsuya's characters, because it shows that fundamentally they operate very differently. Despite now knowing that the police and these people betrayed and ruined his father, Katsuya continued to believe in the justice system and was determined to catch and arrest the people responsible so they could be properly convicted. Conversely, Baofu was the exact opposite. He experienced the same betrayal that led to the death of his partner, but he instead conforms to his own moral code to kill those that wronged him and get even. Baofu and Katsuya go at each other constantly for their opposing views, even going as far to call each other reckless and foolish. However, the two understand one another on a fundamental level that makes them very interesting foil characters. Furthermore, Baofu is a very pessimistic character, and is often used as a reference to adulthood being difficult and unfulfilling. On the flip side, Maya, Ulala, and Katsuya are all very goal-orientated people who are generally cheerful and full of heart. They are also characters who are considered adults but still feel as though they are in the transitionary period, in particular Ulala. So as the team comes to the end of the dungeon, it is interesting to see the entire party looking out for Tatsuya as he himself enters that growth phase, with even Baofu promising him that being an adult isn't all that bad. And that brings me to the Persona 1 characters. Nanjo and Ellie can both be met during the same point in the game right after you first meet with Sneak. I did Nanjo's route first because I had more of a connection with him from my Persona 1 playthrough. Also, I looked at some game facts and heard through the grapevine that some content was only accessible upon doing the Nanjo route, so I just trusted that and decided to do the Nanjo route. Nanjo was a character I always found very interesting. He was a spoiled rich boy at the start of Persona 1 who was quite obnoxious to boot. When his butler Yamauka was killed by zombies in the hospital, Nanjo was devastated, as he was the only one that really cared about him on a personal level. He promised Yamauka that he would be the #1 man in Japan, and the anger he felt was what led to him awakening to his persona. Back to Persona 2 though, like Innocent Sin, Nanjo is in Sumaru due to rumors circulating about Kandori. On our journey to prove whether or not these rumors are true, we learn about Nanjo's personal values and his desire to make the world a better place using the technologies developed by people that tried to use it for bad things. He talks about the Diva system developed by Kandori, but more importantly, he uses his knowledge of his family's technology to infiltrate the sewer system and the lab where the kidnapped jokers were taken, and where the maybe Kandori is. We learned from Nanjo that he essentially walks the middle ground between Katsuya and Baofu. He follows his own sense of justice, a path he is proud to blaze, and can stand behind without regrets. But he still, for the most part, acts within the law. Ellie is the last standalone character I wanted to talk about because she was the last character I experienced, as in my first playthrough I went with the Nanjo route. I didn't play the full third of the game with Ellie, but I did the Sumaru TV dungeon, and it was, in my opinion, the best dungeon in the game. The puzzle was interesting, I found the mystery behind Naureen and the Stalker's appearance to be interesting, and a good way for us to very quickly see into the heart of Ellie's character. Also, I just adore Brown, Yuki, and Naureen, and the fact that all three of them appeared made it instantly the best dungeon. Playing with Ellie reminded me that I also need to hurry up and finish the Snow Queen route on Persona 1. Honestly, with such a strong introduction, I was a bit bummed that I chose to play all the way through Nanjo's route and not Ellie's, but I honestly don't think I have it in me to grind through that many dungeons just to see a few micro interactions that are different between the characters. I was most interested to see how she interacted with Tatsuya, perhaps in another playthrough. And finally, that brings me to the other Persona 1 characters. Once again, I was looking out for the Persona 1 cast like crazy. Obviously there was Nanjo and Ellie, but there was also Maki and Yukino around town available to talk to. And if you deigned to do Nanjo's route, then you met Reiji as well. Brown was available in and after Ellie's route. I really enjoyed the incorporation of the Persona 1 cast because I felt as though they really assisted in reinforcing the overarching themes of growing into an adult and what it means to do so. Maya, as a character in Innocent Sin, was used as a means to teach the younger party members to follow their dreams as they grow up, to not give up on themselves, and always look on the bright side of things. These are lessons they all took to heart, but it's something that Tatsuya struggles with now that he is bearing the responsibility of being the keeper of memories on this side. Mount Iwato shows us Nanjo's memories of Ellie, Naureen, and Maki, and both their friendships and their promises to one another. It's a depiction of pure friendship and optimism that reminds Nanjo of his original dream from when he was a kid, and allows him to continue onwards. Nanjo is used as a parallel for Tatsuya continuously throughout the game, in particular through the eyes of Katsuya. Katsuya compares the two and talks about how, despite only having a 2-year age gap, Nanjo is far more put together and adult than Tatsuya is, and he hopes that one day he will reach that level. However, when looking at his memories, we are shown that Nanjo too is confused and unsure about what he really wants and can accomplish as an adult, but it is something that he can have a working definition of and lean on his companions to figure it out. This parallel and these bonds being shown right before Tatsuya and Maya finally reconcile ties the scene together in a way that links back to Maya's lessons in Innocent Sin, and I think is a beautiful moment for all three of their characters. Also, I love Boy with the Earring, my boy Naureen, so much. He's actually my flamboyant gamer king, and I'm so happy he was back in this game with one line and a bad bitch. And that brings me to the exploration. Eternal Punishment played very similar to that of Innocent Sin, featuring many of the same locations and dungeons. My favorite addition was the manhunt mechanic, where you basically just went around town trying to find people and you got money in exchange for it. It got a little tedious, but it was pretty fun at first. There was also the map side quest that you can start right after beginning Nanjo or Ellie's route, in which you map dungeons for a guy and he gives you cards in exchange. Despite playing the game on hard mode for about 2/3 of it, I didn't feel super incentivized to do any of the additional content in order to make my builds better, and I was really not hit with the completionist bug that I was during my Innocent Sin playthrough, so there probably was quite a bit that I missed in terms of side quests from rumors. My only complaint with the map side quest was that the very first one I had access to was the science lab with Nanjo, and to finish the map it required negotiation with shadows for information, and they were being so mean to me. I literally for the life of me could not get them to give me the rumor I needed. I ended up googling and even following an ancient GameFAQ thread walkthrough to do it, and I still couldn't get these stupid demons to give me the rumor I needed, so I just gave up. The final extra thing that I liked in the base game was the underground bunker dungeon in Cuss High. I didn't end up finishing it because I forgot it was there, but I thought the ambiance was cool and I really liked the notes and what they alluded to in the dungeon, and it was also a good place to farm cards and bestiary stuff. It essentially acted as the abandoned factory did for Innocent Sin. The last extra thing that I had access to was the additional scenarios. You could access them through the Velvet Room, and essentially they gave you access to kind of visual novel type episodes. I only did the first one with Tatsuya, but I thought it was pretty cool because it gave us more insight into the characters and kind of what was going on, because it showed us what Tatsuya was up to early game. So yeah, those were cool. I believe there's 3 all day, but I'm not too sure what the last 2 are because I never got around to doing them. Next, I wanted to talk about the combat and contact system in this game. Throughout the entire game, I found combat to be a bit of a slog. At its heart, it was still the exact same system they employed in Innocent Sin. The only difference was that instead of employing your character's actions one at a time through each menu, it was one big menu where you could set their actions. And guys, this is literally almost the exact same system, but I found the combat to feel so much slower in this game. It honestly might be that the animations themselves take longer, I don't know, but I eventually just set it to auto mode so I didn't have to watch the animations, and that helped a little with the pacing, but it didn't make the game feel like any less of a grind. I went back to check my script for Innocent Sin, and I noticed that I actually wrote the exact same thing about the animations feeling slower, so maybe I might be suffering from RPG burnout, but also maybe Persona 2 just plays slower. Similar to how Final Fantasy IX plays a lot slower than other games in the series. The contact system, on the other hand, is probably the most extensive one in the series. Much like Innocent Sin, each character has a specialty negotiation that they are able to perform, such as Tatsuya's Death Glare or Maya's interviewing. Much like Innocent Sin, they are also able to group up to do different contact methods, such as Katsuya and Baofu's Investigation of Terror. My personal favorite was Ulala and Baofu's alcohol is my life. That one always made me laugh. It was fun to try out different combinations of contacting and such, especially because by the end of the game, grinding for free cards was getting a little tiresome and the character interactions made it a bit better. The last thing I wanted to talk about was the Persona fusion in this game. For those of you unfamiliar with how old Persona works, essentially you are able to summon Personas with cards from the Arcana they are derived from. So it's not so much fusion as it is in later games, more so as it's summoning. Essentially, by communicating with demons and making them excited, they will gift you cards from their Arcana. If you make them happy and forge a pact with them, then upon making them excited, they'll gift you free tarot cards as well, which can then be turned into cards of any Arcana. Still with me? I wanted to bring this up because, as I said, I was looking through my script for Innocent Sin and I noticed that I made a point to mention that I found the game very easy. While with Eternal Punishment, that was not the case. As I mentioned, I played a good chunk of the game set to hard mode, but I noticed that I really only played the game set to hard mode for as long as I had my stash of free tarot cards from when I transferred my Innocent Sin save data. Once I ran out of those cards, I really did not feel the desire to grind personas, because not only did you have to grind out the cards, you then had to find a persona whose affinity matched up with the character you needed it to, but also the abilities and weaknesses were ideal for the boss you were facing. And guys, I was so lazy. I did not wish to embark on this grind. So I set the game to easy mode and had 0 issues until the final boss. Guys, the final boss is actually a challenge in this game. I finally sucked it up and grinded some new personas out for my party, and even so, I was shaking upon doing the winning run of this boss. So if games that require a little bit more strategy and planning and resource allocation are your cup of tea, then you might really like Eternal Punishment. However, it may still feel a little grindy. I don't know, I thought it was, but some people are into that, so yeah. And that brings me to the music. Persona music has always been really good. A lot of the tracks are reused from Innocent Sin, and I really like the music in Innocent Sin, so no complaints. I think the track that I love the most is the sad version of Maya's theme. The end of this game is incredibly sad, but it wasn't until those first few notes of Maya's themes kicked on that I lost my shit and started bawling. Music making us feel stuff for the win. Something else that I wanted to talk about that I figured I'd lump in with the music because it is sound related was the voice acting. You guys need to understand the absolute whiplash I got going from Innocent Sin to Eternal Punishment. The North American release for Innocent Sin was in 2011 and featured a lot of voice actors I knew and was pretty good overall. The North American version for Eternal Punishment was from 2000, so that's like an 11-year gap between games, and obviously the voices in Eternal Punishment are different from the ones in Innocent Sin because, different times, different voice actors. The battle lines in Eternal Punishment, in my opinion, are very solid. I thought the battle lines were fine, but some of the cutscene delivery lines were so awkward that, it kind of took me out of the game a little bit. It definitely doesn't help that Tatsuya and Najo's voices in the first games I heard them in were some of my favorites. I really liked Keith Silverstein as Tatsuya, so the switch up was crazy for me. However, I would like to say it isn't as bad as everyone makes it out to be. I see a lot of people shitting on the voice acting in Eternal Punishment, and I don't think it's as bad as some people make it out to be. Random thoughts I had while playing the game. I know that I've been playing way too much Kingdom Hearts because I literally cannot take X's on clothes seriously. I literally see the X on Tatsuya's clothes and I'm just like, Xehanort. I'm sad they got rid of Belladonna, Nameless, and the Demon Painter in the Velvet Room. I think they just added a nice vibe that I kind of miss in New Sona. It's mentioned in the game that Maya likes wine. I don't remember where, but I know it was mentioned. And I really love Maya, but I had to make a point to dunk on her because I'm a wine hater. I literally did not get this interaction till the very end of the game, but your persona will actually react to a persona that's mythologically the same as them. I had Mars equipped to my Tatsuya, and when I met Ares in the last dungeon, they actually communicated with one another, and I got to skip a battle, and I thought it was really cool. Something else I learned at the very end of the game, literally the very last cutscene, because I was forced to watch the cutscene before the final boss 800 times because I kept dying, is that you can actually fast forward. If you hold the X button on your PlayStation controller, the game fast forwards, and I did not know that until the very end, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so stupid. I played Eternal Punishment at the most unfortunate time because it was right around when Reload came out, so everyone has been spoiling the heck out of Persona 1 and 2 on Twitter because they have remake discussions and the games are old enough that it's okay to spoil them, but it was actually rough in Persona spaces for a few days. I really, really love the intro to this game. The cinematics and foreshadowing are really good, and the music is a bop even though it blew out my eardrums a few times. Katsuya is so cute. I love how he was the first one to be like, cat, when we were in the Sumaru TV station, and he didn't want to hurt the cat, and he was really invested in this cat even though he's allergic to cats. In conclusion, I adore the characters and themes of Eternal Punishment, and I think it's a solid sequel and a relatively fun game. However, I do find the combat to be a bit tedious and the game to be a bit grindy. Once again, it really boils down to what you enjoy in a game. I myself am very character and story forward, so I really liked Eternal Punishment despite tiring of the combat. However, to be honest, I don't think I will ever replay this game. I enjoyed it for what it was, I liked the characters and the story, however, there really isn't anything in it that makes me want to replay it, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's pretty solid, but like I said, it really just depends on what you look for in a game. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.